So if you've been following AFT Dice Season 11 and you're thinking, what on earth just happened?
Yeah.
Well, you're absolutely not alone.
Yeah.
It feels like we went from this predictable march to the finals into a full-blown demolition derby.
That's a perfect way to put it.
The ladder we saw before round 12 looked, relatively stable. And what we have now is just, it's been thrown into a blender.
It really has. We didn't just see close games this weekend. We saw genuine shockwaves, these massive, massive upsets that have completely recalibrated the top 8.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. We need to cut through that noise. We're going to look at the round 12 reports, the new power rankings, and then preview what the sources are already calling the Sunday slaughter in round 13.
Right. And to really get it, to understand why everything is so volatile, we have to dig into the numbers. We're looking for those nuggets, the specific margins that explain all this chaos.
All right, let's dive straight in. 9 winners in round 12. Collingwood, Geelong, Hawthorn, Melbourne, Brisbane, Port, Sydney, St. Kilda, and Richmond. But like you said, the story here isn't just who won, it's how they won. The margins are everything.
Exactly. And let's start with just pure brutal dominance, because that really set the tone. The biggest win of the round belonged to the Geelong Cats.
Yeah, that was something else.
They absolutely dismantled Essendon by 52 points. The final score was 15.13 to 7.9. The analysis called it a clinical thrashing, and honestly, that might be an understatement.
What made it so clinical?
It was their forward line efficiency. The data shows their ability to turn an inside 50 into a legitimate scoring shot was 10% higher than their season average. They were just ruthless.
And it wasn't just them putting up big scores. Melbourne finally found their kicking boots, right? They put up 17 goals to stop the Western Bulldogs' hot streak.
They did. That was a big 26-point win for them. And what's interesting with Melbourne isn't just the goal count. The analysts really zeroed in on their forward connection rate. It jumped by nearly 15% this week. That tells you it wasn't just luck. It feels more like a genuine tactical shift that just paid off big time.
So that's different from, say, the Richmond game. That felt more like a shootout.
A total shootout. Richmond beat Fremantle 19 goals to 16. That was just sheer offensive firepower, overwhelming a pretty solid defense. A real high-wire act that Richmond pulled off.
Okay, but as you said, the real chaos, the reason the ladder exploded, wasn't just the blowouts, it was the upsets that just blindsided everyone.
Oh, absolutely. There are 2 results that force the entire competition to just stop and recalibrate everything. First, the upset Collingwood delivered against the Adelaide Crows.
Unbelievable. The team on top of the ladder.
Exactly. And the Pies didn't just scrape by, they dominated them. Won by 48 points, 18.12 to 10.12. This wasn't a clutch win, it was like a surgical deconstruction.
I have to pause on that 48-point margin. What struck me in the source notes was Collingwood's work in the middle of the ground. They were up 10-2 in center clearances. That's not something they've done all season.
Not even close.
So that feels like more than just a lucky day. That's a tactical reset.
It is, and it was a devastating percentage killer for Adelaide, which I know we'll get into.
Right.
The second massive shockwave was Hawthorn going to Perth and beating the West Coast Eagles. A 4-point thriller.
Chaos wins again.
That's exactly what one analyst said. And it's true. Hawthorn's high-risk transition game just completely unsettled them. It also confirmed that West Coast's home ground is not the fortress it used to be, which is a huge red flag for their finals hopes.
And we can't forget the Sydney Derby. The Swans snatching a 4-point thriller against the Giants. The reports are calling that another massive upset.
Yeah, one that breathes life back into their season.
Okay, but let me challenge that a bit. The sources call it a massive upset, but it was a 4-point game. Isn't that just a classic tough derby? Or was there something else at play?
That's a fair point. I think the massive part comes from the context of, GWS were expected to win and win comfortably. The tactical part was in the last 5 minutes. Sydney's defense just locked them in. They forced turnover after turnover from the Giants' exit kicks. So the upset wasn't just the final score. It was Sydney's ability to control the end of the game on their terms.
And that completely redefines the mathematics of the season. So let's transition from the results to the implications, because those huge margins are what's fueling this exploding ladder.
And we have a new hierarchy because of it. The Brisbane Lions are now the #1 team. They're 9-3, 103.5%.
They took care of business against North Melbourne.
Yep. The Gabba Fortress is intact, and the reports keep calling them clutch and consistent. They're officially the team to beat right now.
But hold on a second. If they're clutch and consistent, Why is their percentage only 103.5? That seems low for a number one team. Are they really dominant or just good at winning tight games?
That's a really crucial distinction. Their strength isn't blowing teams out. It's executing perfectly in those high-leverage moments, especially in the fourth quarter. You can contrast that with St. Kilda, who are now second at 8-4. Their win over Carlton showed their pressure machine is humming again. They win through relentless aggression, which is why they feel like a genuine top 4 lock.
And then there's Fremantle.
Yeah, this is what's fascinating. They lost to Richmond, but they're still third on the ladder.
Why is that?
Their percentage, it's an elite 113.0%. That's their safety cushion. It tells you that even when they lose close, and when they win big. Their defense is still considered scary.
That percentage cushion is just monumental, especially when you see what happened to the teams that fell.
It's instant and it is brutal.
Look at the Adelaide Crows. They dropped all the way to 5th. Still a great 8-4 record. But that 48-point loss just crushed their percentage. It's down to 108.7.
And this is where that one bad game can undo weeks of good work. For anyone listening, percentage is just your points for divided by your points against. So when you give up 120 points and only score 60, that ratio just takes a catastrophic hit.
It's a percentage kill.
Exactly. They now outside that safety zone. And West Coast, after losing that thriller at home to Hawthorn, they've slipped right out of the 8, down to 9th.
The critique was pretty blunt for them, wasn't it? Home form slipping.
It was. Losing a game you're expected to win at home, even by 4 points, is just fatal in a season this tight.
Okay, so let's talk about the risers. This is the real story of the round. Collingwood, biggest riser, jumps all the way to 8th. That 48-point smash of Adelaide makes them a genuine finals threat overnight.
It's transformative. But if you look closer, Collingwood is a statistical anomaly. They're in the 8, but their percentage is negative. It's 94.3%.
Wow.
They're there based on the volume of recent wins, not on dominance. It shows that while their form is hot, they're still carrying the baggage of some bad losses earlier in the season.
Then you had the Swans, now 10th. That Derby win has pulled them right back into the bubble conversation. And Hawthorn are now 7th. Their chaos footy is winning them these unwinnable games.
And that disruptive style is just paying huge dividends right now. But at the other end, round 12 really felt like the nail in the coffin for a few teams. Essendon, after that 52-point loss, their revival is officially over.
Yeah, that was grim.
Carlton are fading fast at 17th, and North Melbourne are the clear wooden spoon favorites. The gap between the competitive teams and the bottom 4 is widening at a really alarming rate.
Okay, so with the top teams getting stronger and the bottom teams sinking, let's look ahead. Round 13 is being called the Sunday Slaughter. The sources all agree the season now enters the brutal phase.
It really does. This is the round where the top teams can pull away and percentage hunting becomes the number one priority. The predictions are for 4 blowouts and 3 really tight games.
And a lock of the round.
Has to be Adelaide Crows versus Essendon. Adelaide is tipped to win by 44 points. This is all about a percentage repair job for them. Expect them to come out breathing fire.
And there are a couple of other expected blowouts. Richmond versus Carlton is tipped by 42. The report just calls it Big Brother bullying.
Yeah, it's a fundamental mismatch. Richmond's forward press against Carlton's inability to get the ball out of their defense. It's a recipe for disaster for Carlton.
Then you have Geelong at home against West Coast.
Yep, at GMHBA Stadium, Geelong tipped by 19. It's going to be Cardinia Park pain for the Eagles. Geelong is just a different animal at home.
So even if the teams on the bubble win, they could still lose ground if these top teams boost their percentages so much.
That's exactly right. It just raises the bar for everyone else.
All right, so what about the critical bubble clashes, the games that could blow the ladder up all over again?
There are 2 that are being called massive for the bubble. First, there's an upset alert on Hawthorn versus Melbourne.
Really?
Yeah.
Even after Melbourne's big win, Hawthorn are tipped by 16.
Yeah, the thinking is that chaos will prevail. The analysis suggests Melbourne is really vulnerable to Hawthorn's high-risk transition game. If the Hawks can make it a messy, chaotic contest, the sources think Melbourne's accuracy problems could come back to haunt them.
Okay, and the other big one?
The don't miss match. Western Bulldogs versus the Brisbane Lions. The Lions are tipped by 28, and this is a big but, the reports warn that the Dogs can upset if they bring the heat.
So if they can shut down the Lions midfield, they have a shot.
A real shot. And an upset there would just fracture the top of the ladder again.
And finally, the riser showdown. Sydney Swans versus Collingwood.
Yeah, two of the big movers from round 12. Collingwood is tipped by 12. The source just says you never write off the Magpies, especially now they've found that dominance in the middle. It's a huge game for finals legitimacy.
So 4 blowouts and 3 tight ones.
That's the prediction. The top 4 are expected to pull away, and the bottom 8 are just going to sink further. This is the brutal phase, where any team with a soft percentage is about to get ruthlessly exposed.
So what does this all mean for you as you're trying to track this season's volatility? We've seen how just a couple of shocking margins, that 48-point loss for Adelaide, the 52-point win for Geelong, completely rewired the entire competition in one round. It just validates how real and how mathematically driven all this volatility is.
It absolutely does, and it validates the importance of percentage. Let's just come back to the team that embodies this risk perfectly. Collingwood.
Right.
They're our biggest riser. They're a genuine finals threat, sitting in 8th. But, as we said, they have a negative percentage, 94.3. Their wins have been clutch, but their earlier losses were so costly, and that creates this huge mathematical vulnerability.
Which brings up a massive question about sustainability, especially heading into this brutal phase of the season.
Exactly. So the question I'd leave you with is this. With the top 4 about to pull away and inflate their own percentages, how sustainable is a final spot for a team like Collingwood or even Hawthorn that relies on chaos and clutch wins but still has a negative percentage?
Can they keep defying the laws of mathematics?
Right. Will this brutal phase immediately expose those teams clinging to the bubble, or can chaos footy keep winning? That balancing act between just getting the wins and having the numerical dominance to back it up is the single most important thing to watch from here on out.